Hello travelers, Vlad here, and today I have my first No Man's Sky how to build video, which is this Hot Wheels inspired race loop. Now before I jump into the meat of things and show you how to build this, I want to thank a few YouTube creators for their videos that helped me figure out the different tricks that I use throughout to put this together. First I want to thank Double Dash Gaming for his video on how to flip things like floors and also how to build things like ramps. I want to thank Scottish Rod for his video on how to build a perfect circle, and I want to thank Tbag005 for his tip on using the race boosters to help get your exocraft all the way through the loop, which is essential for the build. So thank you all for your contributions and helping me learn the different mechanics of the No Man's Sky building. And without further ado, let's jump on in. Let's figure out how to build this loop so you can get to racing. Alright, so the first thing we're going to want to do is find a building area, and I recommend a flat area, and then grab yourself one of these small stone walls. I like using the stone walls because they're cheap with silica powder as the building material. Place two of them on top of each other and then place a stone floor on top of that. This is just going to kind of serve as our pseudo starting point for the next steps. Now we're going to take our regular size stone walls and we're going to place 7 of them on top of our floor that we just placed, just going straight up vertical. And then once we get to the top, we're going to use our first glitch, which is brought to you by Double Dash Gaming, and it's going to be flipping a floor to be vertical. So first thing we want to do is grab our light floor panel, and it's going to be very important which direction we place this. So on the top of it, you'll notice that there is a thicker wire on the side, and we're going to actually make sure that that thicker wire is facing outward, horizontally, parallel, whatever, to our wall that we're placing it on up here at the top. Then we're going to grab our stone floor, switch to wiring, and we're going to highlight the toggle point for connecting a wire to that center of that light floor. And we're going to press toggle wiring in place, one right after the other, almost simultaneously, and that's going to glitch this vertical floor into that light wall. I will link to Double Dash's video on that just so you have a more detailed description of how that works. Now the next thing we need to do is build a vertical circle in the sky. I got this technique from Scottish Rod on how to build a circle. So we're going to place down a mechanical door, and then we're going to use a wire glitch to glitch a wire instead of this floor panel, and we're going to connect this glitched wire to our power door top. And then we're going to delete our original floor panel. We're going to use the same wire glitch. So basically all we're doing is green lighting the floor panel, hitting toggle wire in place about the same time, which will glitch a wire instead of the floor. And then we're going to connect it over to this original wire that we glitched so that we have a straight wire. We're going to put back our original floor panel on the bottom of the power door. And then we can delete the power door and this angled wire here, and we're left with a vertical floor and a wire sticking out from it. From there, place a couple of floors in the pattern that I show you here, and we're actually going to wire glitch instead of placing that second floor, and then wire glitch a floor panel into the center of our original one, and it's going to make this little diamond type pattern. And we're going to put a couple of triangles on top of this new floor, these 2 floors that we have, and we're going to do the same wire glitch from each one of these triangle points where a full floor would attach to them. Now if you're not familiar with these wire glitches, we're going to be using them throughout the build, so by the time you're finished with it, you'll be very well versed in how they work. But if you're new to it, it can be a little bit frustrating. Sometimes you may not get the results you're looking for. You can see that I'm having a little bit of trouble in the video here, and you just kind of got to stick with it, go with it, and you'll get these things in place. And once you've mastered the technique, it'll come secondhand. If you continue to have trouble with one point, like I'm having a lot of trouble getting this floor panel to go in the right place, then I recommend just moving to the next floor panel you need to put in place and making a mental note of the one you skipped. It's very important that you don't leave any of these floor panels out for the overall build, but you don't want to just frustrate yourself by failing on the same point. And as you can see here, I moved on to this floor panel it goes in without much of a trouble. And then when I go back to this one, I'm able to get it in without an issue. So now we have our points for building our perfect circle. We're going to build 3 floor panels out on every single one of these floors that we did, so that we end up with a giant circle of floors in the sky. So 3 out. I'll start with the top and bottom, and then I'll fill in the center, and we'll speed things up so you don't have to watch me put this all together. Now that we have this giant circle, we can delete most of the center pieces except for the very first ones we did to make the circle. Now we should have this giant target looking thing in the sky. And what we need to do is turn this into a cylinder. We're going to use our trusty light floor panels to do that. And make sure that the thick wire is facing the direction that the circle goes. Like if you took your finger and drew a circle all the way around, that thick wire would need to follow your finger all the way around. So very important, the placement of these floors. So now we have this target with all these light floor panels at the outer edge of each one of these floors, and we're going to glitch some horizontal floors back in place. So that's why the direction of this thick wire is very important. So double check it before moving forward. Now go ahead and select your stone floor panel, switch to the wiring mode, highlight the center of the light floor, and then wire glitch the horizontal floor back in place. And since we have this circle made, it is going to glitch these floors into forming the shape of a cylinder as we go along and put each one in place. And if you put in a floor that's wrong, like I did, make sure you're deleting the correct piece, or else you may have to work to get it back in place. So now we have all of our floor panels in place for the cylinder. We can delete all of the scaffolding we used to get it there, these floor panels and the lights. And now you should have this nice cylinder with the centerpiece in the middle, and we can move on. Now we need to set the loop. So we don't want a cylinder in the sky, we want a loop so that our car can come in one inside and go out the other. So we're going to start our transformation of this by choosing our stone powered door and placing it on the outer edge of the cylinder, all the way around. So now we have these in place, we're going to use some more wire glitches. So green state a floor panel going to the outer edge from our powered door, and connect that wire that we glitched in to the top of the door. This is the same thing we did for making our circle. And then we're going to go to the outer edge, opposite of the one we just did, and connect that wire to the one we just glitched in. And then we can delete our powered door, and we can delete that angled wire, leaving just one going through the center of our floor panel. And we're going to do that all the way around the circle. And this takes a little bit of time. It is a little bit time consuming, but make sure you take the time to do it correctly, because wires that are going the wrong direction will end up in an imperfect loop, and that's not what we want. So I'll speed this up here for us to get through, and then I'll show you some things not to do where I screwed up. Now here's my first example of what not to do. Make sure that the power doors don't attach to each other. Make sure they're attached to the floor panel. And then make sure you glitch your wires in place. Now here's the second example of what not to do. We don't want wires that are at weird angles. We want them to go horizontal through the floor panel. So if you come across any that you realize you did incorrectly, it's important to fix them. So we're going to delete that wire. We're going to glitch in our horizontal wire that intersects through this central stone floor so that we don't have any problems when we move forward. Now we got most of these scaffolding that we used to get these wires in place deleted. We're going to give this once over to make sure that all of our wires are exactly where we want them to be. And if we come across problems, we need to fix them. And you shouldn't have any like this one we're coming across now that is at this weird angle. Now that that is fixed, we can continue moving on and just double check everything, that we have a horizontal wire going through our central cylinder panel, because these are important for creating the loop. Now that we have this double checked, it is time to build a save beacon. You may want to do this earlier than what I just did, but this is a good chance to save. Now we have this like pinwheel type thing going into the sky, and we need to place some floor panels to make our loop. So what you need to do is go ahead and choose your stone floor panel again, go into wiring mode, and then go to the outer edge of one of your cylinder wires. Connect the wire to that point and then bring it diagonally to the floor panel below it and go through the loop, and then wire glitch a floor in place. And you'll notice that comes in nice and angled. Now you need to make sure you do this consistently throughout the entire thing with each wire so that you end up with this circle cylinder looking thing with the pointed edges of the floors touching instead of the flat panels. And this will create the basis for our loop, and we have to do this all the way around. Alright, so now we have our basis for our loop in place, and we need to delete all the scaffolding for these extra cylinder floor panels. But before we do that, I'm going to make sure there's a central one at the very bottom, but everything else we use can go away once that's in place. I keep the wires just in case I screw up. All right, next we need to prepare our entrance and exit loop. So you're going to be coming from one direction and you need to go around the loop and go out and continue in the same direction you started the loop in. So this next build, we're going to be building in two different directions on either side of the loop. And we want to connect to that central flat floor panel, not the angled one, the flat one. We want to go 2 floor panels out on either side. And then we need to choose which direction we're going to be driving through this. And when you figure that out, go ahead and do a panel, 2 panels attached to that outer edge one on either side. Okay, once those are in place, we can kind of delete these central floor panels, so they're just not in our way. And you should be left with 2 floor panels kind of floating in the air to the side of the loop on either side. Now we're going to use some wire glitches to make a ramp that's kind of at an angle. So I'm going to start by putting a single small wall, and we're going to wire glitch using a small wall attached to the top of it. I screwed up here, so I kept this in because I wanted you to see what not to do and what to look out for, because you could put these wires in the wrong place if the game decides not to work with you with the glitch. So green state it, toggle wire in place, then we're going to drag this wire across to our panel across the way, and then we're going to put a small alloy wall here, wire glitch it into a wire, and then drag it to the other side. Now I screwed up on this wire glitch again. Some reason that ended up away from the floor panel. So sometimes the camera angle, I think, affects this. Just make sure it ends up directly at the end of that floor panel, and then drag it to this wire connection point we created with our first wire. And now we can delete this extra wire. We're going to use this angled wire to glitch a angled floor panel in place. I learned this from Double Dash Gaming. And we're going to hit highlight this little wire point, wire glitch this floor in place. Then I'm going to use a couple of small floor panels just so I can adjust this floor panel that we put in place to align with those original floors we put in. This is a very slight angle, so when you put these floor in place, just make sure that it's connecting at the angle and not trying to snap to, like, say, that alloy wall and put it flat, because that would negate the whole reason we put in this angle to begin with if we end up making it flat. So just pay attention to the way the game is connecting these floors and that you do have the angle that you desired. And it may fight with you a little bit, but have some patience, you'll be able to get it in there. And we're just going to leave 2 floor panels in place and leave it there until we need it later. Okay, so now we need to set the loop, and what I mean by that is set the panels that you're going to drive on as you go through the loop. So we're going to go up 2 panels from the center, and we're going to place 2 floors out on one side of this, and we're going to do that all the way until we get to this central top point, and then we're going to switch sides, and you'll see this visually as we go through, but I want 2 floor panels attached. And these 2 floor panels should align with the little platforms that we created for the entrance and exit. So getting up here to the top, having to fight a little bit with the snapping. And you'll know your central point up towards the top because it's it's the flattest panel of the circle up at the top. So you can identify your central point by looking for that flat one. And we're going to come 2 floor panels out from it, and we're going to complete, that side that we were doing for the 2 floor panels. And you may want to just pay attention to the way the pattern of the floors are. If you want them to all be the same, then you're going to have to make sure that you do it now, because later flipping them will be much of a pain. Now we're going to go back up to the central snap point that we had, or the central part of the circle, and we're going to go 2 floor panels out on the opposite direction. And then we're going to continue down the other side, only putting the 2 floor panels on this side of the loop. So now we have the basis for our loop going. You can start seeing the loop really come into form now. Now grab yourself an ally triangle and put it to the top of these floor panels we just placed. Again, pay attention to the pattern if you want to. All right, go all the way up and do the same thing on this side. We're going to place this triangle pattern all the way around. And now we need to put in some more floor panels because you can see the gaps in our floor. So we're going to put a floor in. And it shouldn't be able to snap angled to that triangle. And then we're going to go to the outer edge and snap another floor. And depending on what you start on, you may not be able to get this 3rd floor over to the central edge in. That's okay. That's important. Each side of this is kind of its own unique beast. So I'm going to finish up this side, and I'll show you what I meant by saying that on one side you're not going to be able to get that 3rd floor in place. It's because we're making a loop and we have different angles coming from either side. Okay, so here's the other side, and it's very similar, but you'll notice we have a different angle going on, so we're not going to be able to fit all the floor panels in like we did on the other. We're only going to be able to fit the initial full floor and then the second full floor attached to the triangle piece, but we can't put in this 3rd one towards the central edge. So keep that in mind as you go. We will have to do different things for either side as we move forward, but go ahead and carry this through all the way to the top. Okay, so now we're going to go to the opposite side from where we just built that ramp. I'm just going to put a single floor all the way to the middle. And then I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to start in the same spot. And I'm going to put a single floor on the edge and go all the way to the central middle. Okay, so there we are. We've got a lot of our loop structure in place. We're going to grab a triangle. We're going to put it to the bottom of each one of these squares we placed. I'm going to do that on both sides. So I'm going to switch over here. And then when I get to the central part, I should have a triangle fitting spot on either side to kind of make this connection point of the 2 sides of the loop seamless. All right, so now we have most of our loop structure in place, and now we can connect the entrance loop to what we built so far. So this is very simple. We're just going to grab our floor panel. We're going to build out until it intersects with the loop that we've built. We'll make it go through so there's a seamless transition, and we're going to build this out on either side. The only trouble I had here was snap points and making sure that these angled floors continued on an angle gradient instead of trying to snap flat in certain areas. And if you have some problems with snap points towards the center, we can delete these first 3 panels of our lower loop because they're not going to be there at this point. We don't need them anymore. See, this one didn't want to work with me. It wanted to go in at an angle instead of flat like the one next to it. So I go ahead and skip it and I move over to the other side. And then again, if you want to make sure your pattern is matching, you pay attention to the way the floor panel patterns are and fix them as you go, instead of trying to come back in later and flip them, because all of these snap points confuse the build menu. So now we have our 2 entrance and exit ramps. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I fill in this panel that was a trouble point for me. And with a little bit of patience, it'll go in flat like it should. Here we go. That's in place. Now, we still have a few areas of our loop surface that aren't smooth, and we're going to go ahead and fix that right now. This side is pretty smooth, but we want to make sure our exocraft can travel and not run into the loop, entrance and exit wise. So I'm just going to go to here. I'm going to delete like 2 floor panels up. Now on this side I was a little bit wishy-washy. It didn't look necessarily right to delete them at first, but then I just double checked myself on the other side and confirmed that I really did want to delete 2 floor panels up so that my exocraft wouldn't have any trouble passing underneath this part of the ramp. And like I said, I have a few uneven areas of the track left for the loop. So we're going to put those panels in place. This is one of those areas, so I'm going to grab a flat floor panel, connect it to my central loop piece, and then do 1 over angled to that triangle. And that's going to make a nice smooth track on this side of the loop. And then we're pretty good on this side of the loop. I don't need to do anything there. So we're pretty good. I'm happy with our loop and its drivable area. It's nice and smooth. We have 2 entrance and exit ramps. But now we need to extend these access ramps so that we can drive onto them, because we are kind of floating in the sky. So if your rest of your track is going to be elevated, then that's not a problem. You can kind of just make it intersect with this. But if you want to go from the ground up into the loop, then we're going to need a ramp all the way up. So now that housekeeping is done, we need to figure out how to build this ramp all the way down. We're going to place a full wall underneath the ramp, and then I'll use small stone walls to get as close to the ground as I can without intersecting it. And then I'm going to place another floor building outward from that, and I'm just going to extend that until I have it where I want the entrance to the ramp to be, which in my case was just where I started to run into the actual ground. And then we can delete these floor panels except for the last one. And we can delete these walls we used as a guide. And now we're just going to use our wire glitching, similar to the way we did these entrance and exit loops so far. And we're going to bring out a wire, use our stone wall again to then connect to that central point we created with that first wire up towards the top. Then we can delete this first wire. And we're going to wire glitch a floor into place. And it's going to be at an angle because we're using this wire to get it where we want it. There we go. Now I'm going to adjust where I'm standing just so I don't have any problems with things running into me. But we're going to use the same trick we used with this entrance and exit ramp. We're going to use a couple of small floors to use as an offset so that our floor panels line up with the ones that we already have in the ramp. There we go. Now we can extend these floor panels all the way down until we intersect with the ground. And we'll do that to finish off the loop on the other side. Put in our other flat panel. And now we're good. Now we can move over to the other side and finish out if we want to put borders on the outside of the ramp so that our exocraft has, some sort of a guide of, you know, the track. Now it could run over these small walls very easily, but, you know, aesthetically they look great for the track and defining where your track is. So one ramp done, let's move to the other side. There we go. Now we have our fully extended ramps. We can enter this with our exocraft, no problem. We've got pretty much all of our loop done. We got the track is almost ready to go. But we need to set some booster pads. That is the trick for getting through this loop without much of a problem. Though this is a very big loop and sometimes your driving skills will need to be improved to get all the way through it. Now, what I did is I took these wires and I drew a line all the way through the loop as a guide to know where my exocraft needs to follow to get through this loop. And so that's going to be my guide for placing these ramp force amplifiers is their official name. I'm referring to them as the boosters. So we're going to wire glitch these into place. So using my wire that I put in place as a guide, I'm going to choose the first spot to put my booster pad, which is going to be really close to where the loop starts. And you'll notice on your wire piece you have a pointy part and you have a fatter end at the end. So we want our pointy piece to be facing the direction we're driving into the loop from, and we want the fatter side to be facing the direction we'd like to be going. And that will make sure that your booster ramp that we're about to glitch in place is pointing the right direction where the arrows match the way you would like to drive through the loop. Now these aren't specific. They will let you drive over them either direction and give you a boost the way you were driving through, but I like to have all the arrows pointing in the right direction. And as far as spacing of these loops go, I made 3 going up and 3 going down and 1 in the very central part of the top. Just so you have a guide of how many of these you're going to put in place, figure out your spacing. But this isn't an exact science. You can put things in place, take a look, see how it's going. If you don't like the way the line is going for driving through them, then you can adjust it. It's not going to be the end of the world because you'll want to do some testing with your exocraft as you go through, see which placement works better for you to successfully make it through the ramp. But the big point is making sure that you don't mess up and put these going in different directions to where the arrows on the pads are facing each other. It gives your friends a good line of sight of how to get through the loop. And once we have all of these booster pads in place, we can then delete our wiring that we use to as a guide to get them there. But before you delete them, just give everything a nice once over and make sure that it's following a good drive path through the loop. They're not at an extreme angle, extreme turn, something like that could send you shooting out of the loop as you try and go through it. Okay, so I think that completes most of these boosters. Yeah. So here we go. Let's take a look at it. We've got these, and you can kind of see I messed up with the angle on these. Some of them... This side looks great. This side looks good. You can see from that central point a nice clear line to drive through, but these aren't particularly lined up well. So we're going to fix this booster pad here so that everything has a really nice line to drive. Okay, let's take a look at this. No, that's worse than the original. Let's try this again. It's worth noting that the angle that you put the wire piece onto your floor panel is important for the angle that it's going to end up at when you do the wire glitch to put it in place. The other part for the wire glitch means that they sink into the floor instead of just sitting on top of it. and then you don't have a bunch of bumps in your road. But once you're happy with the line that you have with your booster pads, you can delete the scaffolding. And of course, don't forget to save. You just finished your loop, and we want to make sure you're saved. So here's a good look at the loop with our booster pads going through. You can see our very nice, clean, dry path, and that all of our floors make a very smooth driving path with our circle and our that we use to put them in place. We have a very clear entrance and exit. And this is what it looks like from afar. I replaced that central little donut that we made for making that original circle with these light boxes. Makes a really cool pattern, a little bit of extra adornment to it. So at this point, you're ready to build the rest of your track, connect it to your loop, and or you've got the ramps in place. Go ahead, let's give it a test drive. Let's see if we can get through this thing. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope this helps you out with your own builds. Don't forget to leave me some comments down below and let me know what you think. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the latest content from Vlad Administrator Gaming. Until next time, I'll see you around the cosmos.